Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this engaging panel discussion on Simplify Your Complex Hybrid Cloud Ecosystem, organized by NTT and Cisco in association with ETCIO. The modern enterprise is becoming complex. A majority of the organizations are embracing cloud platforms while still retaining on-premise infrastructures. By keeping some workloads on-premise and others in private clouds, they are creating complex hybrid IT environments. The challenge for these businesses is how to simplify and monitor this new hybrid environment. The session aims to bring prominent technology leaders in an engaging discussion around this crucial subject. So without any more delay, please join me in welcoming our panelists of the day in alphabetical order. Mr. Harsh Vaishnav, Head of Sales, Data Center and Cloud, Commercial Business, India and SAARC, Cisco. Mr. Indrajit Saha, CISO, Indian Oil. Mr. Kaizad Chaviwala, Business Head, Hybrid Cloud Infrastructure Solutions, NTT. Mr. Makarand Sawant, Senior GMIT, Deepak Fertilizers. Mr. Nilesh Gade, CISO, Bikarat. Mr. Rahul Joshi, CTO, CSS Corp. Mr. Raj Niravati, Head of Technology, Watches and Wearables, Titan. Mr. Rishi Gupta, Head Infrastructure and Cloud Solutions, Airbus. And Mr. Sachin Jain, CIO and CISO, eValueServe. Welcome, gentlemen. Let me set the ball rolling with you, Harsh, because you are on top of the list. So there has been a lot of talk these days on how well public cloud has been adopted. We've seen growth numbers from some hyperscalers, and they look simply amazing. Does this mean, sort of eulogy for hybrid cloud providers like yourself? Are we looking at a tectonic shift of workloads completely moving outside the glass walls of the data center? Is that a trend that you are seeing in the market?
Yes, thank you so much for a very, very good question. And before I answer that, I just want to use this forum to extend my warm welcome and wishes to fellow panelists and wish everybody well in these challenging times. You're right. The indications of where the numbers are do seem to suggest that it's the death knell for people who are predominantly looking at setting up infrastructure on-prem. Is the answer to your question yes? The answer is an emphatic no. I don't think this is the end of the road for people who look at infrastructure on-prem, and I have my reasons to prove that it's not the way it looks like. One, I think when you look at how the pans out for a period of 7 years, which is the typical time frame that an Indian customer tends to kind of sweat their assets, the whole move of moving everything to the public cloud, which should be absolutely prohibited from a TCO perspective. The second thing is some of the regulatory requirements actually will stop the customers to look at moving everything to the public cloud. Third, there are certain workloads which requires latencies or low latencies, if I may, and that obviously doesn't become a possible or a good candidate to be moved to public cloud, right? And last but not the least, I think security still remains a concern, which will necessitate that not everything has to be moved to the public cloud. But what has happened is the fact that because of this, because of either it being a knee-jerk reaction, either it was the need of the hour with the situation that we faced at the beginning of last year in March, our customers have gotten the taste of public cloud for sure, right? Which means that when they look at what needs to be done next, especially for setting up the hybrid cloud infrastructure, the richness of the elements that are so important or that have really positively impacted our customers when they have gone ahead and adopted public cloud, like extensive automation, like deep observability, and the ability to run or the ability to coexist the existing environment, which could be bare metal, could be running virtual machines, or for that matter, something which is more future looking, where you start leveraging modern architectures or modern application architectures that run on containers and microservices, is going to be very critical. So if anybody can kind of tie up these three things and then build a proper framework from a hybrid cloud perspective, the answer is no. We don't need to be threatened.
Let me move to Mr. Indrajit Saha now. Indrajit sir, Indian Oil has done some amazing stuff digitally. You've built an integrated platform for customer relationship management and distribution management systems. How far are you in your journey to hybrid? How do you look at this trend in your enterprise?
In our enterprise, we have just started moving toward the clouds, but it is a very, I can say, very shaky steps. We are now still testing, and we were testing more, and now we have become a bit open, and we are gradually moving much more application to the clouds. But the major applications like ERP and other things, we are still on keeping in our own data center, separate data center. And obviously, being a big organization, we are for hybrid cloud. And many of the applications, which mainly CRM and ERP integration, ERP is inside our data center, CRM is in the cloud, and similarly, there are multiple clouds. So we are already in hybrid with multiple data center, multiple cloud scenarios. But some of our major applications, which is critical application, we are still holding in our own data center, majorly because we were coming with this thing, we are having more confident, we were having more experienced people who are in a position to maintain those things. But we know very well that gradually we have to move more towards the cloud. If I think about cloud, there are mainly two things coming in the mind is risk management. Risk management, if something happens, where it has happened, and who is the person responsible, whether if there are multiple service providers there, and if the part of the application is being processed inside and part of the application is maintained at the cloud, these things are going to come. And whenever we are thinking about Indian Oil, almost every citizen of India is the customer of Indian Oil. Either they are purchasing through petrol, diesel, LPG, direct, indirect, they are. So there is a huge customer base. So you cannot take risk. So risk management is the major area of concern, which I am finding that cloud has still not given that much comfort in that. And data redundancy also. So thinking about the SLA. SLA in silo is okay, but whenever you are going to keep a application which has being processed at different places, different times, so overall SLA application response time is maintaining and improving is again a challenging job, which I am finding that gradually we are improving, but clarity across industry is also not there. And till now, we are keeping our public data center within India. So that is one good thing. But I am thinking of the organization who are keeping the public data center across different countries, different continents. So compliance will be another issue in that case. So these are the things which are not taking that much momentum, especially in case of PSUs. Because compliance is our major and one of the most, that may be for all the organization, is the most area of concern and major area of concern. With that thing, we are moving, and it will take some time to again come and to see the Indian Oil's presence that in that big way in the cloud.
Great, sir. Let me come to Rahul now. Rahul, sir just said there are certain concerns with respect to moving to the cloud. But if you look at the global hybrid cloud market, it was valued at $50.1 billion in 2020, and it is projected to grow at a CAGR of 17.8% till 2028. And the reasons for this growth is that it lends enterprises that agility, scalability, and cost efficiency. So these are business attributes that any organization would want. How are you looking at maximizing cloud in your organization? How do you look at the risks versus the benefits?
Yes, thank you, first of all, for having me here, and wishes to all my fellow panelists as well. So we look at hybrid cloud on what we call as the 3R framework, right? So what we call as rejuvenation, and then renovation, and then reimagination, correct? So these are the three vectors along which we believe hybrid cloud brings value to any organization. So what do I mean by these three R's? Let me explain. So rejuvenate actually means ensuring that you sweat out your existing assets, whether they be in the data center or in the cloud, correct? So there are three basic things that you do when you're looking at rejuvenation kind of a vector, correct? You would look at automating all your core operations, correct? So you will want to digitize, particularly in this time. That has become a huge imperative for the organizations, correct? And that you are able to do that because you have this API based access in the cloud, you have your in-house systems that can talk to these environments and so on and so forth. So one of the latest examples that we ourselves at CSS Corp have implemented, and maybe many other organizations have, is essentially how do we do virtual hiring and virtual onboarding. We have been in work from home model from March 2020, and we have doubled our headcount during this time. All because we were able to do the digitization of all of these core operations, correct? And that was only possible because we looked at APIs, we looked at the things that are there in the hybrid environment that we could automate. And all this systems actually provide you a lot of analytics which you can further enhance and automate more and more. So that's the optimization that we are doing. The other thing that we do when we look at rejuvenation is risk reduction. That the threats have kind of quadrupled 5 times, 6 times from the time that people have started working from home. And one of the things that I was reading somewhere that because of downtime and security breaches, you would approximately have 650 billion losses to the organizations by 2030. Now, right. If we just improve the architecture and the security, framework, we can say 57% of those costs for all the migrated applications, correct? And that's a huge number, correct? And this assumes that 50% of all your hybrid infra is actually in cloud, correct? And then that's what we are looking at. This is very important because this is the primary, should I say, blocker for moving to the cloud. So if you have proper architectures, you can actually do something about it. Now, sure. The third one that almost everybody mentioned was IT cost optimization and so on and so forth, right? Now, shift and lift actually increases the cost. For those who have actually done shift and lift, without any remediation on platforms, without any optimization on the platforms, it actually leads to increased cost to the effect of 28%, 29%, over a 3-year and, an esteemed panelist even mentioned that number when he was discussing this earlier, correct? So what we have done is we have done those best practices. We have eliminated some of those things, improved the platform and so on and so forth, which essentially gave us about 34 to 38% infrastructure cost efficiency and ADM efficiency, which is the development and maintenance efficiency, to the tune of around 26 to 31%, based on the data that we have looked at and analyzed when we started moving to the hybrid cloud environment. Correct? Sure. So of this rejuvenation, I'll tell you one proof point from my IT organization itself. The IT budget for run business, which is essentially supporting the business, has gone down by 24% per billable employee. Wow. And this has come because, we measure all these metrics, right? The second thing, innovation, I had the technology function within CSS, right? And it is imperative for me to innovate, to differentiate ourselves from the market, right? So there are 3 use cases that I find, and the earlier panelist point, yes, there are use cases which can only be done in private cloud or in premise, right? So one is, there are use cases that have been unearthed only because there was public cloud. For example, things like neural networks, things like speech analytics, things like, those which actually make deep learning possible. Sure. Right? Sure. And then there are use cases that could make do with, a lot of benefits of the cloud, but actually can be run on-prem. And the third one, obviously, like others mentioned, security, compliance, and all of that stuff. That's actually something that, you can't do. The other thing, and I'll just mention this proof point as well, because the rate of technology change in the cloud is so rapid. In 2021 itself, Amazon has done 1,000 plus announcements. Okay,
Yeah.
1,000 plus. And we are
Right.
not even halfway through, right?
Sure.
And it's a pandemic year.
Sure. Right.
On extensions, on new features, and on price reductions and so on and so forth, correct?
Right.
Which is amazing, correct? So the rate at which I can churn out products and functionalities is very, very fast. And that's not just Amazon, right? You look at hyperscaler,
sir.
any hyperscaler, you'll see the
Got it.
same numbers.
Got
Okay?
it. Right, sir.
So that way, the rate at which I am able to deliver business functionality has exponentially increased in the past 3 years.
Got
The
it, sir.
third one, reimagine, is fail first, fail fast.
Right.
Anybody would like to, look at AR, VR, blockchain, 3D, and all of that stuff. Really,
Right.
really fast, correct?
Sure.
So those are the three vectors in which we see hybrid cloud utilization.
Okay.
And there are some numbers that I would like to quote. Our feature velocity has, the time to, improve the feature or build a new feature has reduced by up to 27% because we have judiciously used both these, infrastructure components.
Wonderful. Great, sir.
So those are things.
Yeah.
And there are some lessons. We
Yeah.
actually moved in tandem with business. You can't isolate yourself. And the second biggest lesson is invest in your people, because all of this is not possible by taking freshers out and
Okay.
giving them the infrastructure to work with.
Sure. Great. Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much for that very comprehensive answer. Let me quickly go to Dr. Makarand now. Sir, coming from a manufacturing company, how do you look at this, the hybrid cloud, the benefits that it brings to business, and how are you leveraging it? How are you maximizing it?
So earlier, our priority was always to host critical applications on premises. But because of this pandemic, we never envisaged earlier that we would have challenges in accessing our own data center, which is situated at our own office. So this has clearly given us a lesson that no matter it is on-prem or on cloud, you are equally challenged when such kind of situation arises. So with this learning, we have now started adopting cloud. We have started migrating few of the applications on cloud, and we are, as a way to go as a strategy, we are thinking that hybrid would be a long-term solution for this, wherein we implement critical workloads on premises, but at the same time we should have an active DR on cloud. So whenever there is a issue in terms of physical access to our data center, at least we should be able to operate from the cloud instance that we may have, which would be in active mode. And
Sure.
while doing so, as an architecture also, we have thought of having a single window control architecture where everything should be managed centrally through a single architecture, a single console window. So both my workloads, may it be on cloud or on premises, they should be centralized, and the management should be through a central operating panel. So that is where we are focusing more now, and accordingly also implementing cybersecurity solutions which can secure both on-premises as well as cloud environments.
Wonderful. So lots of lessons that pandemic has thrown for technology leaders there. Great. So let me come to Nilesh now. Nilesh, your company plays in a very niche sector, transforming steel wire. How and why is a hybrid approach crucial for your business?
Okay, so first, let me give some background. So if you look at Bekaert, we are operating approximately 120 countries across the globe, and we are very niche in terms of steel coating and transformations. For us, it's a slightly different story. We are a manufacturing organization, and we mostly, it's a kind of, if it's a traditional kind of plants where you have your own things. But recently, in last 2 to 3 years, we have started our entire digital transformations, where we are looking for intelligent base processes. We are looking for a digital way of working, and we have completely set up the entire digital of what you call digital program office and steering committee of that. And we have a huge next X+3 plan for this. When we're talking about cloud, we traditionally, it's again hybrid for us. We have our own data centers in Belgium and mostly in Europe, you can say. But coming with new digital transformation, we know that there are certain things like infrastructure, O365, SharePoints, OneDrive. These are which we call it the minimum requirement are already in the clouds, and that is only way you can now. So more to get the benefit and quickly speed up the entire digital transformations, we are going with more and more SaaS services. I will not talk about more as infrastructure, but it's more SaaS services. So whether it is SAP, CRM, or it is any supplier management, or it is an HRMS, everything new which we are building, we are going with the SaaS services. So that is one we are doing. I think in terms of challenge, we only have challenge which we see is more from the because of the Chinese firewall. So there are a lot of concerns. We have major 20-25% of our population work from China. Major plants are in China, and they have their own regulatory rather than firewall requirements and all those things. So only the concerns comes when we need to access all these SaaS services or digital platforms which are on cloud, how easy they can operate and whether the access are available to all my employees and plant from the China. Otherwise, it's really work fine.
Great inputs there, Nilesh. I'll come to Rishi now. Rishi, a lot of IT leaders are spending a large chunk of their time in repeating tasks, such as service ticketing, firmware upgrades, compatibility checks, inventory management, that kind of stuff. Can these repetitive time burners somehow be mitigated? Can technology leaders leverage automation to mitigate all these time-consuming repetitive tasks and activities?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, we have been leveraging a lot of automation out here. Essentially, ABUS started its digital transformation a few years back only, and the first thing what we needed to do is the standardization of the provisioning, standardization of the maintenance, standardization of the operations, so that we save a lot of time on the overall optimization of the environment, and we should focus our energy on the future roadmaps. So, infrastructure as a code or infrastructure management as a service or a software actually came to our rescue. We are heavily using DevOps. We are heavily using automation. We are heavily using AI Ops for monitoring. So we use AI Ops for our monitoring, and we continuously monitor the performance of our infrastructure. We also automate a lot of predictive analysis, capacity management, and basically data tiering and assigning the data to the right storage so that we optimize our platforms. And as far as upgrades, maintenance, patching, and everything is concerned, we have put it onto our DevOps pipeline so that we can actually automate all of them. So the focus has been using this infrastructure as a code rather than using infrastructure and infrastructure. So that we can actually automate like we do in hybrid. Like you have tools and technologies available wherein the service providers will manage for their customers. We treat our infrastructure users as our customers, and we try to automate everything which is available out here. And DevOps has come to a great rescue. So if you combine the artificial intelligent operations along with the DevOps, normally they said, okay, we are moving from IT Ops to the DevOps, but no, you actually cannot fully move there. You have to make a niche balance out of it so that you can automate, but not compromise on the security. You cannot compromise on the availability. You cannot compromise over all the user experience. So you have to make a combination out of it. And standardize. So we work on a lot of standardization. We don't try to create snowflakes out of the infrastructure wherein you have the unique components and we are floating around and it becomes a nightmare for people to manage. So that's how we are dealing with it.
Sachin sir, I'm sure everybody would have heard about the Pareto's principle. 80% of the time is spent on just managing the infrastructure, while only 20% of it is left for innovation. So how do you upend this kind of a situation? Through automation, is that the way forward?
No, I agree, and I agree with all the thoughts, especially what Rahul and Rishi have shared. And when they were talking, I could resonate how things are moving even in our organization over the last many years. And when we started our organization way back in 2000, the thought which I had, obviously we did not have any cloud that time. But one thought which was we were dealing with that we will not have any client-facing application within our own data center. And we started using co-locations, and that mindset was already built where we had to use services outside our data center. And then how do you run the integration? How do you manage security? How do you manage compliance?
And how do you reduce the manageability? Because when you run your organization as a startup, you always have to be cost conscious, and then you always have pressure on budget to even to increase your headcount. You have to be very, very careful. And I think if I look at the growth of our organization, basically the trajectory, we have grown tremendously globally. We have over 4,000 people. But and if I look at the percentage of growth of our organization, our growth of IT organization has not gone to that percentage. And how do you manage your operations with that kind of budget pressure? And I think some of the things what all the panelists have already said. How do you basically leverage the hybrid cloud? How do you leverage some of the money you've already invested? And how do you ensure that your business is able to move fast, especially in this, even in the pre-pandemic era? And if I talk about our journey, we adopted public cloud in 2012. We migrated to the messaging collaboration platform again around the same time. We did the desktop virtualization, everything. And in a way, our organization was ready to deal with some of these challenges. Obviously, not of this current scale, what we all are dealing with, but we were prepared to a large extent. And that's where we see how do you look at, one, the infrastructure, the entire optimization of that, and then how do you leverage all these automations and digitization of your IT ops, where you don't have to be physically inside the data center. And that's what I do not want. And what Rishi was also mentioning, I mean, you also always need to look at that. How do you reduce the manageability? How can you use some of this modern technologies like AI, machine learning, all the DevOps and automation of ticketing? And I think you mentioned that. How do you leverage that so that you don't invest time in some of these basic tasks and you leave it to all the service providers and the tools you have available, so that you focus on the business growth? And that's where the entire IT organization is moving towards.
So we haven't heard from Mr. Neeravati. I'll come to him now. So there are hundreds of servers that are running in a single data center today. And thus it's really hard to manage the entire network. So how are you using automation for dealing with repetitive tasks? Because automation can remove guesswork. It can lead to increased consistency. There are lots of upsides to it. So are you also maximizing automation, and how?
So two things. Titan is known as a household name, as a B2C brand, and people think that it's more about the stores and retail. You'll be surprised to see that we are a heavily technology-backed company, and we have actually taken cloud adoption to more than 80%. Firstly, and we are actually a multi-cloud and a hybrid cloud company. The reason why I call it as a multi-cloud is because, see, if you look at today, we don't have homegrown applications entirely to manage your entire business. And you're really necessarily not looking at, this is my code and this is my application, right? Like, for example, for field management, we use Salesforce for CRM and all, right? For ticket management, you might use ServiceNow. So there are, like, we use SAP for billing and all, right? Manufacturing and all. So you actually have a combination of SaaS-based applications, which are actually on their own cloud, right? We have our own homegrown applications, which are actually on our own, right? So and plus our source code, everything is on GitHub and all. So that's why we are a multi-cloud, plus also a hybrid, because some of the critical applications, like everyone else, is still on our own DC, right? Yep. Now, how do we really look at automating the mundane things that you've asked? Is one of the things that, like, most of the organizations would have done is using RPA, robotic process automation, in order to ensure that most of the mundane tasks are automated and you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. Second thing we are into prototyping now, not yet completely implemented, is actually moving towards a serverless code. See, no matter how much ever you automate, no matter how much ever you try to optimize your infrastructure by right sizing everything, it's never going to happen. And the simple reason is because the business is unpredictable. Can somebody guarantee that, like, I'm going to have X number of transactions today, or I'm going to sell only Y number of products? Never, right? On a sudden day, you might have a spike for which organizations are actually investing and keeping those infra available to see that surprise day and not make sure that there is a financial loss, right? So for those applications, we are actually going for a completely serverless code where we are actually relying on Amazon or Azure. We are completely Amazon now. We are relying on Amazon to actually scale up, scale down, take care of everything. We actually give code as a docket and then let Amazon take care of scalability, data privacy, make sure that it's multi-tenant. And the best part of it is we are actually getting charged on a millisecond basis for the usage. So your idle time is not charged. Our e-commerce is not 24/7 yet running. So we are trying to identify applications which need that kind of scalability, and we are actually moving into 100% serverless code in order to utilize some of the cloud capabilities.
That was a very crisp, concise, to the point answer. Thanks a ton. Kaizad, I'll come to you now. Kaizad, what are your thoughts on automation? Because it also frees up manpower that can be deployed at more important activities. What do you hear from the market?
Thank you, Yash, for the question. And I think we have also heard it from the panelists here, apart from what we hear from the market. I think automation is the key thing today. We as service providers and solution providers, when we interact with our clients, while hybrid models and multi-cloud models are becoming a norm, like Raja rightly said, it cannot be one cloud, one data center solution today for any customer, to run their IT operations or host their workloads. You need to basically look at, as solution providers, which are the right workloads and which is the right cloud for, the customer. And accordingly, design or architect a platform which can enable them to adopt the cloud of their choice. And that is where I believe infrastructure as a code, CI/CD pipelines, DevOps, and the complete operation automation becomes the key thing today. And I think that is where the future lies. So automation, bringing ease to IT operations is going to be the future. And that is where we as entity, as solution providers, completely focus on work together with our customers to deliver the automated infrastructure to our clients. So that's what I feel, and I look at it in that way.
So automation is the future for technology leaders. Great, Kaizad. Let me come back to Indrajit sir now. Indrajit sir, it's crucial for organizations to monitor, analyze, and optimize complex environments at scale. How do you lend your hybrid cloud infrastructure, complete visibility, power of application performance management, end user monitoring, that kind of stuff, complete visibility into your hybrid environment?
In the hybrid environment, basically you are managing multiple data centers. So you obviously require a dashboard. Otherwise, you will not be able to correlate those things. So basically relying on dashboard or interfaces of each separate cloud environment can quickly become messy. You will not be able to run this thing. So we are using tools and which is also on premise and public cloud. It is interfacing from the both, fetching data, then analyzing, and whenever and wherever we are finding that some SLAs are also not meeting, that those things are also being highlighted using those dashboards. So it is now more and more we are depending on the dashboard than looking at some of the performance of the servers or some of the performance of the network or some of the performance of the security devices. We are not doing that. We are depending mostly on the dashboard, and any decision is being taken through the dashboard. In multi-cloud and multi-data center environment, obviously, until and unless you are optimizing those things, SLAs and other things, you will not be able to achieve. And if you are not in a position to optimize those things, your ROI will not be there. So to understand where to attack and where to fine tune to improve the ROI, it is a bit challenge. Until now, it is a challenge. It is not like that we are in a position to achieve the 100% ROI, what we were thinking. And we have found that there are many places where excessive assets or resources are being provided, and we are not in a position to migrate our other applications or storage on those resources and use those resources at the nick of the time. So some of the applications are which are suffering, and some of the places we are finding the resources are there. So more and more fine-tuning and using of the dashboard and AI-based system only will help us, and we are still on the process of learning those things and understanding the full scenario.
Yeah, so I'll come to Rahul now. Rahul, like Sir just mentioned, there is some amount of fine-tuning that is needed, because one of the major concerns with most CIOs is the effective utilization of existing assets, including hardware and software. The average utilization averages below 1/3 or over provisioned by 2/3. And it all boils down to visibility into the infrastructure, deriving business IQ. How do you do that? As a CIO, what's your strategy in getting complete visibility into the infrastructure?
One thing that we could all benefit from if we improve the utilization, correct, would be a greener planet and much less stiffer, global CO2 reduction goals. Just to put your question into perspective, Yash, IT and IT related carbon emissions are at 4th, except for US, China, and India. The IT related CO2 emissions are, ranked 4th, bypassing any country altogether in this world. So it's a far bigger problem than we think it is. Correct. So when we are looking at right sizing the infrastructure, some of the things that Raj mentioned, like serverless, etc., make a lot of sense. Correct. But more importantly, what makes sense is applying machine learning and AI to right size it and adopt the right strategies across hybrid cloud. So you can't just do it on cloud, which have these built in. Correct. Majority of your servers, like I said, are still in your data centers, are still under provisioned or over provisioned, correct? Like you mentioned. So in that case, the idea is to use the right set of capabilities, leverage AI ML, which are now available, which can be deployed on data centers. The calculation of matrix has also evolved to a very high level of maturity on on-prem software as well. So you will see people like VMware and others giving you fine set of matrix by which you can fine tune your compute sources, your storage, and so on and so forth. So it is up to us as CIOs and CTOs of our organization to be socially responsible. Just don't take it as if it's a bill that's anyway going out. Correct? Like somebody was mentioning, it's the data center provider who's actually provisioned it. Whether I'm using it or not is none of my concern. It doesn't work like that. There is a cost associated with it, and by using the right set of tools and the instrumentation that is available today, it is hugely possible to reduce that spend by at least 50%, if not more.
Wow.
And we've done it, right? It's not that it has not been done. You can see how Google is doing it, how Facebook is doing it, and there are some organizations who are also doing it in their data centers.
Great, wonderful. So, Dr. Makarand, like Rahul just said, how do you think the data center economics changes if we can improve the utilization by 50%, which is possible, like Rahul just said?
Correct. Capacity management is the biggest challenge, because what we do is, while we are implementing new solutions, we always tend to do some oversizing, envisaging some growth that may happen in the application. And the tendency is to ensure that whatever peak load would be there, we need to size according to the peak loads. That is where there is a big difference in deploying applications on premises versus cloud, because in cloud, you have a real-time optimization that is possible. You pay as per use. You don't have to over-provision. So definitely cloud, in terms of utilization of the application, cloud is a better architecture as compared to the on-premises architecture. So that is where we focus wherever we don't know exactly what would be the workload. And if the estimates are not properly there with us, then we better move those applications on cloud so that we see what is the actual utilization and then take a call whether we want to bring it back to on-premises or we continue to utilize the cloud environment for such applications. So that is the strategy we are are using in terms of capacity management.
So Harsh, coming to you, what are your thoughts here? I mean, how can a technology leader get complete insights into the infrastructure to get the maximum out of it? To sweat his infrastructure to the max. Like Indrajit sir also said, it's still a challenge for most CIOs to get that kind of ROI because they don't maximize their existing infrastructure.
Yes, first and foremost, I must say that some of the points mentioned by the C-suite here are so encouraging because I know this is not the right time to make a sales pitch, but if I were to kind of lay down what our hybrid cloud operating model is, every single bit of what has been discussed here gets covered. Whether I heard Rahul sir mentioning about how how important it is to leverage things like insights and automation, right? I heard Sachin sir talk about the whole management piece. I think Makarand sir also mentioned about the fact that this is for the first time, and I hope it's the only time that the operations teams are not in front of the systems to kind of operate and manage and monitor them. But that's what is happening. I think the three things that I can clearly see coming out as overtones from this discussion is everybody is concerned about a consistent and secure application experience. Right? That is uncompromising. You can't just compromise that. The other thing that I can clearly see is that everybody wants to look at how can you make your workloads more ubiquitous, right? Whether you run it on-prem, you run it onto the edge, or you run it to one or multiple public cloud, right? And I think the third thing that is very clearly coming out from these discussions is, look, everybody is under the gun right now. I mean, while number one and number two are critical, I have not heard a single C-suite executive come and tell me that I've got an increased budget for next year. So, preserving capital is so significant. Now, the good thing is, this all can be done. This all can be done in a very consistent manner, right? There are solutions, and again, not to give sales, but there are solutions that we provide that gives you this consistent or this cloud operating model that enables you to kind of deliver all these three things about consistent application performance, workload ubiquity, and most importantly, leverage some of these technologies to alleviate challenges that you see from an operations perspective. But I completely endorse what you're saying. I don't think anything that has been discussed today is out of place, out of context, and it is more future looking than it actually is. But I believe it is absolutely now. So very happy to be here, and I can clearly see that whatever we have laid out as a blueprint seems to be resonating very well.
Nilesh sir?
Just to answer in between, Harsh, you won't find anybody of us talking about the budgets because we learned that never talk of budgets in front of a sales guy.
Great. I understand how difficult it is. I mean, hats off to people who have been in the IT side, who have not just kept the lights on, but who really kept the whole engine chugging. My absolute commiserations for people who have gone through so much of tough times. But it's the IT organizations who have really kept things working for us. So thank you very much to all you leaders here, who and you and your team are doing a phenomenal job, sir.
Great. So moving on, Nilesh sir, the other critical component of the IT infrastructure, and that's being really talked about these days, is the enterprise network. It is becoming more important than ever before. What is the way ahead for your organization's network, supporting business growth? What are you doing to make sure that your network reaches into edge cloud locations with efficiency, threat intelligence, and ease of management?
See, definitely. As you say, that it's more now an hybrid cloud. So previously, it was more like you have an environment where you have a data center across certain countries, and you're all connected through some kind of WAN network. But now the way the technology has changed, we are more and more organizations are going to the cloud, like Amazon, Google, Azure. They are going with more and more SaaS services. So it's totally different way of that. Plus, you need to connect your offices. You need to connect your plants, which can be at quite remote. For us, we have a plant which are very far remote areas, and we need to connect. So what we have done right now, we have gone for SD-WAN. Okay, definitely we have a global service provider which ensures the compliance, which ensures the services. This is one part of the overall network. But when we talk about network, the another aspects come is a security, because we are now connecting to the SaaS services. We are connecting to, especially in a post pandemic, when we are connecting more and more from the work from home. For us in our organization, our IT partners are in India, whereas our plants and the business is spread across it. Because we all know that India is the biggest IT service provider, and most of our IT partners, I would say most are there in India. So we already are having that kind of approach where they provide the services from the India or the remote services, and our leadership team, our employees, our board, everything is working remote, and it has to be so. We have to ensure not only the data centers security, the kind of connections, especially when we're talking, the panelists talk about API. So we develop the entire framework which ensures that whatever network we go for it's a quite secure. And as I said, with the SD-WAN kind of approach, it's help us to get the better performance as well as get a better security on that. And work from home users, we are already going with Zscaler kind of those things, which also ensures that we are well protected on that. So even our security solutions also, we have gone mostly on the cloud because of the cloud. So that kind we try to optimize overall the network performance and security are on the network for us.
Sure. Great. Sachin sir, with a distributed enterprise setup now, there's a lot of pressure on the network in terms of security, manageability, that kind of stuff. How are you addressing these issues?
I completely agree with what Nilesh also mentioned. See, the way we look at the network, and I think it's going on from quite some time, where it's not just limited to your enterprise network, and how things are shaping up. It actually forces you to look at borderless network, and when you look at the complete architecture, which has your enterprise network, multiple offices, as I think Indrajit sir also mentioned. And when you have global offices, how do you connect those offices? When you have multiple clouds, then how do you connect to those clouds? And then within that cloud also, then there are different workloads. Some are private workloads, some are public workloads. How do you seamlessly connect? And this governance part, and I was actually, when you addressed that question around the economics, and I was actually just recalling that discussion we had last year, and then internally also I published an article within the organization which we use for our own company, as well as I share that with clients, that what are some of the factors which are evolving around cloud. Obviously, cloud is going to stay. There are so many benefits, and this one thing which is going to I think be focused more in coming days is, one is the governance, and second is the cloud economics. And I think some of these factors will also be have to take it into account when you look at the overall manageability, optimization, and then ease of using, and more importantly, coming back to that network part, that how do you basically look at this entire network piece, which now has one big component, which is the remote working. And I think many of organizations in our space probably had that component always, but the scale was very limited. Maybe 5% or 10% people were working from home. And when that scale takes a complete shift, so how do you look at your network? And I know during pandemic, some of my CIO friends, they struggle big time handling the capacity of their VPN, their incoming traffic. And the network was not sized to deal with such situation. And that's what happens when, and then all of a sudden there was a burst of putting their workloads in the cloud. Then again, there was a struggle to optimize the network towards the cloud. I think what I look at is a complete architectural change, a change in mindset, where some of the people obviously have to do away with that mindset that it's only the enterprise network within the perimeter which they have to look at, and then optimize and secure. I think what has been discussed is SD-WAN, or maybe some of the other things what we have to look at to overall optimize, and then see how can you leverage some of these modern effects of cloud.
Right. Sure. Coming to Rishi, Rishi, you spoke about DevOps in one of your earlier responses. Application growth and the importance has shifted the goalpost from IT ops to DevOps. The demand for new instance has grown multifold, and the time to provision has shrunk drastically. How do you see infrastructure as a code, playing a role in this scenario where developers are able to provision what they want without the necessity of knowing anything about the management tools typically handled by IT ops?
Thanks for this question. I'm a big fan of DevOps, and I try to implement it everywhere we get a chance. And infrastructure as a code definitely plays a very important role because, as I told, that snowflakes can be dangerous for any IT infrastructure, where you actually, when you create unique components and you later on find difficulty to manage it. So DevOps, when you start using DevOps, or you're starting using the infrastructure as software, or you use a software layer to manage your infrastructure, you create standards first of all, or you create the building blocks. So whenever you have to provision maybe a wall, you put 100 building blocks, or if you want to get a stage, you put maybe 1,000,000 building blocks. So it plays a very important role, and also not only in provisioning. I'll say that also in the maintenance and also in the optimization as well, it is very much important. Like for example, if you talk that you start provisioning manually, you may take years and years to do that, or maybe even in the virtualization cases, some of the places I've seen that it's been done manually, which is not the right practice. You should actually use DevOps very consistently to create, first of all, standards. And also, the times are changing when we say, okay, infrastructure has to be provisioned as per the application. Nowadays, we are changing the mindset. We are talking about designing the application, because the converged world, designing the application as per the infrastructure block one. You also incorporate the WAN design part into the application consideration, because ultimately now we don't talk about application features and all. We talk about the user experience that people want to have from the applications. For that, it's very much important that every piece of infrastructure, DevOps, network, WAN, optimization, development, everything is agile and everything is incorporated seamlessly to give a seamless experience to the user as well. Now, DevOps, when we started using DevOps in software, we very soon realized that, okay, DevOps can be used in infrastructure component. And then we started adding these DevOps blocks to infra, WAN, LAN, user experience, application, databases. Everything became a part of this complete life cycle. As a result, you see some world-class applications coming out, which provide you a seamless experience. Even if like today we have 10 users, experience would be like 1 lakh users. So there's no difference, because the provisioning has become agile. So as the demand increases, the supply is also increased at the back end for the infra components and making it a seamless experience. So it definitely plays a very important role.
So Mr. Liravati, your thoughts here on infrastructure as a code? How do you look at it?
Actually, see, if you really look at developers and IT providers, right, they'll actually look down. Developers first look down on them, and then every time there is always a challenge saying that even though we have adopted cloud, the IT team is slowing down in terms of provisioning, and then we go through the politics of who's approving what and all. Instead, what we did now is we've actually created budgets for each business unit, and that trickles down to each development unit as a sector also. Then now we have enabled developers to actually utilize tools like Terraform, or actually utilize tools like Ansible. Okay, these are actually tools available right now in the market, where a developer need not necessarily go to an IT provider to request for infrastructure. In fact, the next level, what AWS recently introduced, is called as AWS CDK. Okay, what this allows you to do is people can write code in their native language, like Java, if you're a Java developer, if you're a Python developer, and then you can write saying that, hey, I need this system, and if it reaches greater than 80%, then this is what I need. You can put nice if-else conditions, and then actually use that code and deploy it. Now, based on your code, AWS automatically converts it into an infrastructure provisioning DevOps code and dynamically provisions you the infrastructure. And after you complete your testing, right, you can also create the complete decommission at single go. So what you're really doing is you're truly evolving into writing that as a code, compiling it, Your infrastructure is dynamically provisioned, you finish your job, and you have decompletion done. So that's how we are evolving.
Great. Great. Wonderful. So, gentlemen, we've had an amazing discussion so far. Yeah, please go on. Yeah.
No, I was just saying that some of the tools that you have today, like Terraform, you can look at like Ansible, like as I said, these are all the market available options in order to accomplish this goal that you are asking for on how to do infrastructure as a code.
Okay. Wonderful. Great. So, like I was
one last add-on point, because I felt it's a thing. See, we are always worried about security of data, and we are worried about latency also when we try to move on to cloud. And a lot of enterprises are shying away, right?
Yeah.
Even cloud providers got tired of convincing the business owners, saying that hey, it's secure. You please go and you move your code there, and we'll manage. Now they have re-christened themselves and said we have to deliver what business wants, rather than expecting them to make the technology shift, because clearly that is not happening. So what they started doing is, there's, at least in North America, this is now a big trend. Okay, what they started doing is they started creating what is called as POP locations. POP locations are places where, if let's say that you have 20-30, look at Seattle, you look at California, you look at hotspots like Financial District, New York, Wall Street and all. So they would actually take a building right in center of all the other buildings and then just convert it into a data center, and now go around the next set of businesses and tell that this is actually your data center and this is where your data will be, and I'm creating a local VPN for you, and I'm going to give you 0.01 millisecond latency issues. Plus also they're creating tools on top of it like AWS Outpost and all in order to manage that. So these are the ways how people are really overcoming the challenges and saying that cloud adoption truly makes sense and these POP locations can do. Then the second part is when you look at IOC kind of it, right? You have petabytes of data. How do you really transfer that petabytes of data? It might take ages to even transfer the data to cloud, right? They come with suitcases, you can just Google something called as Snowball. Snowball is petabytes that come in a suitcase. You just come in to the data center, you plug this in, and then everything gets transferred into it. And now you go back to the data center in the secure WAN, and then you're done. So there are really new evolutions and new things that are coming out to address these business dynamics. And that's how some of these concerns are getting resolved. Just wanted to add that at the last point. Thank you.
Absolutely. Wonderful, Mr. Indravati. So gentlemen, we have come to the end of this session. It was an amazing discussion. So I'll just reach out to Kaizad and Harsh for their final comments before we wrap it up. I'll start with you, Harsh.
It was an excellent conversation, very engaging. Some of the points that I've heard that the executives talk about are real deep insights into what the problem statement is. The good thing is that there is light at the end of the tunnel. The other good thing that I can clearly see coming out in this conversation is the fact that the hybrid cloud is here to stay. The investments are not going away anywhere. It's just that everybody wants to look at the consistency. Whether people have gotten so used to some of the richness that public cloud offers, and everybody is wanting to kind of replicate it in their environment. So I think consistency is the key. And again, needless to say, the three things that I have picked up today: application performance, workload ubiquity, and cost preservation. I think that's very clearly coming out in all the conversations. So very engaging, and thank you very much once again.
Great. Kaizad, final thoughts from you before we wrap it up?
We are a cloud, actually. If you virtually look at all of us from different sectors and different profiles. So all the information which was spoken today and shared, I would say, Harsh, you and I has to look at this as intelligent insights and come up with tools as to how we bring back intelligent reports and intelligent solutions back to our clients. So I think this is how the hybrid multi-cloud model has been operating. We collect the right information, the right data from the clients, and we come back to them with the right solution. So I think hybrid model is here to stay. There will be multiple cloud providers which will come in market, come into India. But then it is the right selection of the cloud, the right assessment of the workloads, what goes where, and the insights and visibility into how do we deploy where and how much automation we bring into our data center, which is going to add value and bring out the right ROI for our business. I think that's my submission in the end.
Great. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Just to sum up today's discussion, businesses are increasingly adopting digital transformation and seeking solutions to both scale up and speed up their customer and employee experience. Cloud and hybrid cloud ecosystems have been key enablers in accelerating the evolving business environment. To leverage their hybrid environments fully, organizations need capabilities of advanced infrastructure, workload optimization, and Kubernetes services to augment intelligent systems. The way forward lies in aligning with the right partner who understands their business and technology. With this, we come to the end of this session. Thanks once again, panelists, for those wonderful insights. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you so much.